1, 2. Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to my first event at Go to 10. So by way of introduction, my name's Dougie Christoph. I've relatively recently moved to Linköping, and previously had quite a sort of long, some might say distinguished career in the UK civil service, where I started in frontline services, went through the fast stream development programme, and ended up working on policy areas at a senior level around free trade agreements, energy transition and transport. But none of that is what I'm going to be talking about today. That's just to let you know who I am. Today, we are going to, first of all, listen to a presentation from myself, and then we are going to use that presentation. Hopefully I'll get some good feedback from yourselves on what I do. And then after that, I'm going to share some tips and tricks that I think are important for anyone trying to present basically anything to anyone. And then we'll have a Q&A, as is tradition, and a discussion on what you think about the things that I've said to you today. So, why am I doing this? Well, as we know, we get a lot of great presentations at Go to 10. They're really existential technology, innovation, AI stuff, and they're all fascinating, and they get the neurons flowing in the brain. But as great as they are, that's not the type of person I am. I'm much more a person that focuses on the practical things of life, like what shoes do you wear if you're going to present in front of people? How do you have a good meeting? How do you write a good report? And on the assumption, and I'm not sure it's a safe assumption, but on that assumption that I'm not the only person that worries about these things, I thought it would be good to get into the nitty-gritty, because maybe you have a great idea and you've got to tell someone else about it. You want to make sure you do a good job of telling something else about it. So it's one of these skills, public speaking, that I think does make some people nervous. And there's things you can do to make it easier for yourself. So what is going to happen? Well, as I say, I'm going to do a presentation. And to set your expectations around that, I am not a particularly serious person. This might not be a particularly serious presentation. I've chosen Scottish history to present on because it's a topic that is relevant to myself as a Scottish person. And since I've moved to Linköping, I've yet to meet a single Scottish person here yet. So my idea, and it's a very selfish one, is if I teach some other people about Scotland, they might feel a little bit more Scottish themselves. And I might feel a bit less alone, surrounded by people with a saltire stapled to their hearts. Okay, that's it's more philosophical than I meant to get at this section. Any questions before we begin? Or should I just launch into my presentation? Nobody? Yeah, you're going to want to see this. Okay, let's go. Scottish history. Scottish history of Scotland. A short history of Scottish history, indeed. So, that's your title page. We will then move around to the first line. So where do we start? We start with the introduction. Scotland is a country that is, hang on. Scotland is a country that is part of the United Kingdom, which used to be part of the world you call Europe. It shares a border with England to the south, and arguably Norway to the northeast, if you were to ignore all the water. That's the arguable part. It's surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean, the North Sea, the Irish Sea, and includes over 790 islands. Now, I won't be able to name all those islands today, as much as I'd like to, but I can say that Shetland and Skye are two examples in those 790 islands, okay? So if you remember anything about the islands, because they're quite large. Edinburgh. Edinburgh is the capital city of Scotland, but Glasgow is actually the largest city by population, which means, and I think this is really interesting, statistically I'm more likely to come from Glasgow than I am from any other part of Scotland. So that's something that always intrigues me. Scotland's well known for its history, culture, traditions. These include kilts, bagpipes and whiskey, and the Highland Games, which is largely a combination of the first three things that I just listed. The history of Scotland is long and complex, but I think in the 5 minutes I've got, I'll probably be able to cover most of it. And in terms of themes, our story will feature influences from the Celtic, Norse, and Anglo-Saxon peoples, as well as conflicts with our closest neighbour, England, such as the Braveheart Wars and other periods of independence. Okay, next slide. Here we go. Right. The first people to live in Scotland arrived during the Paleolithic period. And I asked AI, it's a really long time ago. And at this time in Scotland, the Scottish hunter-gatherers relied on fishing, hunting, and fish hunting to secure enough vitamins and minerals, so essentially that they wouldn't die from a lack of vitamin and minerals. And then later, but still not recently, during the Neolithic and Bronze Ages, farming communities developed, stone circles and other monuments were built, possibly by the same farmers. I don't know, I didn't check, and they're all dead now, so you can't ask them. So, I mean, that becomes a problem in terms of research for this presentation. The Iron Age saw the, oh, I'm shouting now. The Iron Age saw the arrival of the Celts, who introduced new culture, new technologies, such as smoking and gambling to the Scottish people. And during this period, the Romans invaded Britain, but never actually conquered it, favouring instead to build Hadrian's Wall, a huge wall, ostensibly to keep the Scottish people out of the Roman Empire. But my personal theory is that it was actually just a large public works programme to help with Roman unemployment at that time. Okay. You still with me? Whew, I'm running out of breath. I'm not sure I'm still with me. Okay. Next slide. Early history. So we're getting closer. Moving to the medieval period, Scotland was a kingdom with its own monarchs, and famous figures include Robert the Bruce, who led the Scots to victory at the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314, and Mel Gibson, who travelled from Australia to help fight against English rule for some years before Bannockburn and the battle there. In fact, it was common for Scotland to fight wars with England at this time, and it became a bit of a national pastime, you could say, after the declaration of Arbroath in 1320, and this asserted Scotland's right to independence. Now, my old history teacher had a copy of the Declaration of Arbroath on his wall, and after he'd had like quite a long lunch, he would come in and he would tell us that it was more important than the English Magna Carta. So I think that kind of evidence really speaks to the importance of the Declaration of Arbroath, of that document. I wasn't supposed to say that. So, but anyway, during this time, castles, abbeys, universities, other stuff were built, and Scottish culture is thought to have flourished. Right, fair enough. So we're flourishing, and we enter the Renaissance Scotland, the Scottish Renaissance. Like in many places, brought cultural and intellectual growth. Scholars, poets, and artists all contributed to not just Scottish, but European culture. The Reformation in the 16th century, oh wait, hang on, 16th century, I mean the 1500s by that. Is that the same in Sweden? Would you still call it the 1500s the 16th century? Bollocks. So in the 1500s, 16th century, also changed Scotland profoundly, moving it from Catholicism. We changed religion a wee bit, and under leaders like John Knox, political turmoil, heavy drinking and religious wars shaped the Renaissance period with significant effects on Scottish society and identity. The 1994 movie Renaissance Man, starring Danny DeVito, depicts some of the many struggles of this time. Next slide. Union with England. Feel free to boo. Okay, in 1603, King James VI of Scotland became King James I of England by changing his name slightly, and thus united the crowns of the two countries. In 1707, the Act of Union formally united Scotland and England into what we could call Great Britain today. But even then, this was quite controversial with protests and riots, and some of those riots are still ongoing today. However, Scotland did benefit economically from the Union, gaining access to English colonies and trade networks, and many Scots also contributed to the British Empire through shipbuilding, dying abroad, and other forms of intellectual achievements. Next slide. Arguably the worst slide, so prepare yourselves. In the 18th and 19th centuries, so that's the 1700s and 1800s, Scotland underwent industrialisation with an S, actually, not a Z. But with industries such as shipbuilding, coal mining and soft drink production becoming central to the economy. Much like today, this period also saw urbanisation with an S, abject poverty and emigration. Many Scots left for America, Australia and other parts of the British Empire at this time, and some occasionally found themselves in Sweden too, spreading Scottish culture globally. Where are we? Yeah, we're in modern Scotland. So we're almost up to date now. We're almost to a train wreck of Scottish history. The 19th and 20th century, 1800s, 1900s, also happened. And Scotland saw both growth and decline in heavy industry, cultural revival and political change. The late 20th century witnessed the rise of Scottish nationalism, leading to the creation of the Scottish Parliament in 1999, and that's where all our politicians now live. And then, even more recently, failing to escape in 2014, Scotland continues to debate its role in the United Kingdom, as part of the United Kingdom, with ongoing discussions, largely in pubs, about independence, Brexit, what it means for Brexit, because we, the Scots, did not vote to leave the Europe, and any Scottish politician will tell you that. And it's just the general future of the country. I shouldn't have added that last part. Right, what we're doing. So that's the history, and that pretty much brings us up to date. But there's just a couple of other things that I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention. So, Scottish inventions. We invented, like, basically everything. So we're across the road from the Science Park, home of innovation. It would be remiss not to mention some of these. That Scotland is well known for, as this list clearly shows. These great inventions include the steam engine, the apostrophe, the fax machine, and of course tubular steel, which is everyone's favourite type of steel. If you can see any words that you recognise on this list, you're welcome, is all I can say to that one. And then, almost finished. I want to say finally, but it's not quite finally. I want to do a quick word in Scottish language. Someone asked me about Gaelic earlier today. Well, this is my way of addressing that. In case you're surprised to know that the Scottish language is actually more than just a nice accent. We actually have some of our own words too. And while the main language in Scotland is, of course, English, hey Chris, you have two other languages which haven't completely died out yet, which are Scots and Gaelic. And this, I believe, is an example of a Glasgow man speaking some Scots.
Here he comes. She's told the winds against Saddle. She's told the winds against us. She's told the winds against you, mate, aye. Aye, she's told the winds against us.
Right. Powerful stuff. Did anyone know what he was saying? Did anyone pick up on it? I kind of picked that clip because he's saying the same thing over and over again. What he's saying is, she's turned the wains against us. And this will be a phrase typically spoken by a divorced father after his children have indicated that they no longer wish to see him anymore. So she has turned the wains, the children, against us, me. So, as I say, powerful stuff. Quite terrible too. Let's keep going to the conclusion slide, because ChatGPT told me I needed a conclusion slide. Well, here we are. Scotland, as I think we now all are aware, has a rich, warm, complex and rich history, from ancient times long ago to the present day. Its people, culture, traditions continue to have a lasting impact on the world, including this very presentation that I'm giving right now. Whether it's through our battles for independence, incompetence, or even incontinence, Scotland's history is an important part of understanding our country today. Because what Scotland is now as a country, it has probably occurred because of what happened to Scotland before now. So that's why it's important. And that was the last thing I wrote down. So that's the end of the presentation. Cool. Thank you. Please clap. Well, it's not. Scottish ancestry, isn't it? His mum's Scottish. She comes from Isle of Lewis. Yeah, she moved to America in 1930. Married Fred Trump. Yeah, there you go. Plus, the Iron Brew is very orange, and so is he, which is why the photo is very relevant. Right, okay, I can start being normal again. Right, so any questions? And I think what I want to do in this point is just kind of pick up, like, what did you feel during that presentation? Did anyone like it? Why did you like it?
Also, if you want, we're recording, so if you want the mic, just wave to me.
Uli, maybe if you tell us why you like it, and then we'll go over to yourself.
I loved it. It was fun. It was intentional fun. I did like the fact that you dared.
No, it wasn't. I tried my hardest. tell you about Scottish history.
No, but I appreciate the amount of effort that was put in it. I mean, all those Getty images with the watermarks, bringing out the worst. I loved it. I think
I'm
it's
not
very
made of
daring.
money. I can't pay for the license.
Well, I mean, I appreciated the commitment, and it was
Mm.
fun. It made me laugh. So, like in that moment, it's just. I think I actually felt a lot of emotions.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it was intended or not, but it did bring out the laughter. So it actually hurts in the jaws. So good work.
God damn.
All right,
Well,
anybody else?
I just said that I had the same, sort of the same comments.
Does your
I
jaw
enjoyed
also
it.
hurt?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah, it does.
Oh God, I didn't mean to wound my audience. I'm very sorry about that. Okay, yeah, I mean, yes, that is the spirit of it. It was intentionally bad. There's no point hiding that. But why was it bad? What was the things in it that you wouldn't want to see in a serious presentation? Can anyone sort of identify them?
Should I start?
By
as
all
I have
means.
the mic? Well, the lovely background, very
So-
busy.
It's good, isn't it?
You already mentioned the Getty images and all the missing kind of speaker, insert speaker, those kinds of texts. I love the inconsistent numbering, 2 7s, no 8, that kind of thing. Maybe I will stop there to let some
No,
other
but I'm
people.
so glad you picked up on details like that. Is there any more? So what was the backgrounds are horrible. There's what text is bad because it's just hard to read. There's too much of it, maybe.
Well, there's both too much text. It's hard to read. It's not even when you, let's say, tried to make a cleaner background for the text to be readable. It was very busy with the colors and.
Yes, you're absolutely. Let's not watch the man again. Okay. Anyone else want to sort of point out things that went wrong, intentionally or otherwise, with the presentation? If not, what we do, Darren?
No. What was I going to say? Yes, I will put a little bit closer. No, absolutely. There was a lot of words on the slides. So sometimes with slides, it's nice to just tell a very simple story, but then tell the story you verbalize what's on there, rather than having all the text on it. That said, I like to focus on the positive stuff. There was a lot of jokes in there. I'm not sure everyone got all of those because there was a lot of hidden Scottish kind of humour in there. And also, some of the things you said and what was on the slide was sometimes two different things as well. I think you were using a lot of humour through that. It's very easy because that's a little bit more British, like sarcastic kind of humour coming out, which I personally enjoyed a lot, but maybe some people missed that as well.
I think it's a very good point, and I do have like tips and tricks coming, so I will talk about some of that stuff you mentioned. But the genesis, don't transition. Did anyone like the transitions? That took me back to like 2000 when PowerPoint first came out. I love it. It's weird they still let you do it.
I love the transitions. I have to say, I think great use of transitions.
So the thing with them is the transitions would be quite fine, but you can change the speed that they go at, and so all of them were down to the slowest level to be as excruciating as possible. It is cruel and unusual. So this is where the sort of genesis was. I was like, as I said at the beginning, public speaking doesn't necessarily come naturally to a lot of people. So how do you do it well? And I think there's quite a lot of places that will tell you, here are the things you should do, whereas I kind of wanted to demonstrate maybe a bit more the things you shouldn't do. Possibly I've made it too funny and you've ended up enjoying it, but that was the theory, that showing a bad presentation as a mirror would actually be in a way more educational than doing a good one. So yeah, reading directly from slides or notes. This is the easiest presentation of my life. I just looked down at the paper and read the words that were on it. Overloading slides with text, we mentioned that. Speaking too fast, from nerves or otherwise. I did forget to breathe at points. Lack of clear structure. I mean, there was a structure, but it was like the worst, most boring structure you could imagine. Is that you're going to go through Scottish history? Let's start at the beginning and finish at the end, you know? And then week opening or ending, I'll let you judge on that one, but I tried to make it as bad as possible. So, if that is how you do something terrible, and is there any further like comments on that before I sort of go launch into my sort of tips and tricks things? Yes.
Yeah.
that you had moments in the presentation where the way that you spoke were almost to like
Yes.
apologize for being here. Sorry, I'm telling you this, which is really just ruining your own sort
Yes.
of energy and also very flat tone at times.
Yep.
Na, na, na. Which
That,
I
and
didn't
here's
hear
another
what
thing
you
that
said, I heard
happened,
the
and then there's
tone.
this, and then there's that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And I will get to that if I throat stays fine. So, first thing I want to talk about, I'm going to talk about three things: audience, content, and delivery. In terms of text, things I think about when I'm trying to actually do a good presentation. Audience, who are your audience? Like, do you know what they actually want from this? Why they have turned up? And a lot of times you can intuit this. You can guess what this is. If you are, as we see here, like doing technical presentations, and there's a lot of people with technical expertise, you don't need to do that kind of hand-holding bit for them at the start to be like, oh, if I'm talking about cybersecurity, like, here's cybersecurity, here's why cybersecurity is important. Not required. They already know. So you can get into the technical bits, you can get into the deep, dense data that they might have more of an interest in. So that's kind of one example. Conversely, if you're doing the same, let's say cybersecurity or tech demo, and you've got an audience that might not have much experience, then you absolutely do need to sort of lead them in and sort of tailor it towards them, use metaphors, use real life examples, talk about why it matters maybe more than the actual sort of like nuts and bolts of the topic. So as much as you can, try and find out who your audience are. If I was to give another example, like a Bitman speeches or something that terrified me until I actually gave one, and it was a huge amount of fun. But like, you're at a wedding, right? People are probably waiting for their dinner. So what they want is a couple of jokes and then say something nice about the happy couple. And if it lasts longer than 5 minutes, you're probably overstaying your welcome. Do you know? That's who the audience is for that. And it will differ. So as much as you can work out what they're there for, the more you can tailor your presentation so that it is useful to them. Because people are investing their time, I suppose, in what you're doing. And you're trying to communicate, presumably, a specific message, as I'm now trying to do with that. So respect their time. Make sure it is useful to them. And what the most important takeaways they will want or need. If you don't know, like today, I didn't really know who was going to show up today, for example. Use your own judgment. We should know your material as well as, if not better than most people. What do you think are the most important things? And make sure those are the things that kind of shine as you communicate to the people there. Content. So we've touched on some of this stuff in the feedback already. Too much text. That's always going to be counterproductive. People are going to be like squinting and trying to read it and work out what you're doing. People will read, they won't be listening to what you're saying, and so you've already maybe lost half your arsenal in terms of communicating with them. In terms of how you make your text or make your slides, help yourself. I'm not currently working for anyone at the moment, so I don't have corporate slides. If you do, you will probably already have this and you won't have to worry about design. But what I would venture is 2 lines in a triangle that I stuck on a slide is far more appealing than any of the slides I had in my previous presentation. So keep it simple. Make sure it's not distracting. I said I'd talk about AI, so by all means, use AI to help design and do your slides. Just be aware, it does tend to give you the blandest possible answers. So if you've got a blank piece of page, you want to use AI to fill it initially, I think that's fine, and to an extent, that's what I did with Scottish history, because it's been a while since I was at school. But it's not going to sound like you. And one of the things you really want to get across is authenticity. You want people to kind of see a bit of your character, because I think they will react more positively to that than just sort of reading something bland out. So start with AI, but redraft it, make it your own. And also with AI, make sure it's accurate. Make sure the information it's given you is not wrong. And then moving on to clear structure. So again, we've touched on this. Simple is best. If you want visuals, charts, memes, that's all fine. That can all be quite visually appealing. Just make sure it's reinforcing the message you're saying and not distracting from the message that you're trying to give. So you got a bar chart. Make sure that bar chart absolutely pinpoints the point you're making. And converse to that is just the relevant information. A lot of people feel that pad out the slides. They don't like a slide that doesn't have much on it, so they'll pad it out with things. But again, that's just kind of distracting. So if you're going to put in some text, you're going to put in some imagery, ask yourself, like, so what is the point of this? And if the point of what you've put in doesn't enhance or reinforce the whole point of the presentation, you maybe are getting to the point of asking yourself, like, why am I actually putting that in? Is that actually helpful? Or does it just make me feel better because the slide looks more populated? I'm going to stop saying next slide. But delivery. Don't read your slides. It's no one will be engaged with your presentation if you've got your face in an A4 piece of paper. Rehearse it. Learn it. Learn what you intend to say. And, so if you have a prompt, so if I've got a bullet point, don't read your slides, then I should be prepared to maybe speak for like a minute or two on the art of not reading your slides. That's just a prompt to remind me what I'm supposed to say next. It's like writing something in your hand. And that will make you come across as if you really know your topic, you really know your onions on this one. And it'll give people more confidence in you, which is the second bullet point. This one's tricky, because it's easy to say to people, if you are up in front of people, be confident, stupid. Do you know? It's like, it doesn't work that way. People get really anxious. I'm generally quite anxious right now doing this. But it's there are ways to tackle that, I think. And rehearsal is one of the key ones. It's a bit cringe to sit in a pod upstairs and say all this stuff out loud to yourself. But until you've actually read what's on your paper, the first time you read it, you'll always trip over it. It looks good on paper, but as soon as you try saying it, it just sounds like nonsense and you lose your way. So rehearse it. For that best man speech I gave at my brother's wedding, I was so nervous about doing that. I must have rehearsed that about 50 times, including 10 minutes in my hotel room before I actually did it, along with a quick shot of whiskey. And by the time I actually read it in front of those assembled 50 guests waiting for their dinner, I was bored of it. I was so bored of the words I was saying, but I'd learned how to say it well, and it was the first time they were hearing it, so they weren't bored with it, and it went down really well. But I'd rehearsed the hell out of it, and that actually made me feel good, comfortable in front of all those people, whereas I wouldn't have before. But that still might not work. You still might be quite nervous about doing something like this. I need to stay away from the telly, don't I? In which case, just go with authenticity. Be yourself. Like I'm not one of those sort of public speakers who can just sort of like puff out their chest and give you sort of like a parochial accent. So I'll just be myself. My hands are going to move around more than they probably should. I'm going to speak faster than I probably should. But that's just me, and that's more comfortable for me, and I don't have to invest mental capacity in pretending to be something I'm not. So do that. And the other thing that will really carry you, even if you're nervous, is a genuine enthusiasm for what you're talking about. Like, if you are not, and you mentioned this, if you are not really, I mean, people say passionate, but I think just enthusiastic about what you're talking about, neither will your audience. Like, if you don't seem like you care, why will they care? So even if you're nervous, and no one really gives you a hard time for being nervous, right? Because it's kind of a universal thing. You can be authentic and enthusiastic. And then finally, engagement. So this is where you get your audience maybe to talk back to you. It's a real good way of livening up, actually, because after maybe 30 minutes of speaking to people, even if you are incredibly enthusiastic and all your stuff's really interesting, people still kind of want to maybe tune out after a while. So get them involved. Q&A is one way of doing it. Other thing is, like when I asked for feedback earlier, the danger with engagement is people might not engage, and you kind of have to be ready for that. So didn't know who I was going to get today, who's going to show up. I've pre-prepared questions in here. If no one had asked me anything during the feedback stage, I was going to make someone pull one out of a cup, probably yourself. So be prepared. You might get deathly silence, and that's okay. You can either fill that, or you can come up with some gimmick to fill it. And then finally, on the actual Q&A, I think this also bothers people a little bit because you don't know what people are going to ask, right? And they might ask you something you don't know. And I guess there's a sort of underlying fear about that. But it doesn't have to be, because if you were to ask me a question about Scottish history that I didn't know, there's two things I could do to easily sort of divert that or diffuse that. I'd say, well, I don't know that. And be honest, don't make something up. I don't know that. Does anyone else in the room know that? And you can maybe engage with people. The whole room might not know that either, in which case you'll say, like, it's a really interesting question. I don't know it, but let me go away, have a look, and we can have a chat afterwards, and I'll follow up with you later, do you know? And it's like you're taking all the pressure off. You're no longer on the spot to answer it there and then, which I think is where a lot of the nervousness from Q&A can come from. Okay, so that's pretty much my tips and tricks. And there are other things, like make sure your blood sugar levels are decent, make sure you're hydrated, make sure the tech works. Those are all things that maybe could have been covered on another slide. And indeed, if you ask AI again, start strong, sure. Speak to the audience, not at them. So this kind of engagement, and this it suggests things like eye contact, smile, use people's names. Really effective, kind of advanced stuff if you can do it naturally. If you're doing that artificially and you keep doing a rictus grin in someone's face and mentioning their name, they're going to feel uncomfortable. But once you get more comfortable, it certainly can help with engagement. Simple and focused, practice with purpose, that's rehearsal, end powerfully, so say something philosophically nuanced. And yes, that is the genuine end of me speaking to you. And all I wanted to do at this point was, nope, not that, was leave, I forgot that was there, was just leave some time to see if anyone wanted to ask some questions about those sort of tips and tricks. Was there anything you feel I missed? Is there any of your own wisdom you'd like to share? Or even better, any horror stories of where you've tried to present and it's been a disaster? Any volunteers? If not, I've got a couple of questions. Please.
Yep.
Now everyone's hoping for a horror story, but
Ah.
I actually have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
How do you think about when you're coming somewhere to present? Because I can see there's a difference with now you have a table, sometimes you don't, sometimes you have a stage. How do you think about like physically how you move, how you position yourself, and how to kind of get started on stage, if I can say it like that?
Yeah, so if I was, I can't really go off camera, can I, Aaron? But if I was here, then I think you kind of have to be aware of your posture. So there's a bit of like kind of hips forward, shoulders back, and that will make you look sort of better than if you're kind of hunched over. You do have to think about the physicality, I think, a little bit more if you don't have a prop. So I guess either get a prop, or if you don't, what you'll see a lot of people do, and I think this is kind of in like media communication training, is they'll have their hands, they'll make sure their hands are not flapping around. So they have, like, you see people stand like their hands there. If they're making a point, their hands are going to be there. If they're making a really strong point, maybe one hand goes up, do you know? And you can learn practice motions. Again, I think that's kind of advanced. It's maybe just when you rehearse, stand in an open field and do a rehearsal. Have friends or family in front of you if they're willing to sort of listen to you. And again, it'll be cringe if you're not comfortable with this stuff, but it'll make you so much more prepared for the real thing. So, and don't over-focus on it too much, I think, is the other thing. Like, I think most people, when they're watching a presenter, a bad body language can maybe carry across, but it's not the most important thing. And if you're doing everything else right, they're not going to focus on it anyway. Does that help? Cool. Any other questions?
I was just wondering, in some of that, I guess a lot of it is like personal style and personal way of communicating and stuff. There is some basic principles, and I guess a lot of it, I was thinking back to the words confidence at the same time as well, because confidence, that if you get that element, and that doesn't come the first time or the second time or the third time, you build it up over time.
Yeah.
But if you have that element, then that triggers off into the body language. How do you stand? Because I think if you're less confident, you're maybe going to stand a little bit behind the deck. Depends how you feel at that time. And you see some other people who will come out and kind of like command the stage. As soon as they step away from the table and they step out, they're like exposing themselves and opening up their communication style even more. So it depends on the scenario, it depends on how confident you feel. And that also, like you said as well, Dougie, like that confidence element triggers through to the engagement side, because you got to be a fairly confident presenter to then open up into more like engagement and Q&A, because that really... Because I guess presenting is you're keeping up within your boundaries and you're controlling the situation. As soon as you go into engagement and Q&A, you're really opening up. It can kind of like go anywhere. But that can always be like the best, because I think the best presentations become more like a dialogue and less than a one-way style of presenting. But that's over time, and people who've been doing it for a long time who build up and I think those are always the best ones. Much more like dialogue, forwards and back, rather than just... The worst one is almost someone standing, presenting, giving a message, and then they leave. Thank you very much. I don't know. That's the one. When I thought about you had a lot of good stuff up there. That one word's confidence, I think, triggers off so many of the different things. And that, as you say, comes from practice and everything else. End of message.
It's a good message, though. And I think there is the idea, and what I was trying to get across is, like, if confidence doesn't come naturally, you can kind of fake it at first, and then it will come naturally to you. What I would say, there's a lot of good speakers, and I'm not one of them. I think I'm okay. I'm willing to do it. I think is probably where I'd put myself. But I've seen a lot of good speakers. If you try and be exactly like them, you're kind of it's maybe a bit artificial, and you're spending too much time pretending to be something you're not, and that can actually be quite distracting and make you act in strange ways. So you are better to be yourself and find out what the most comfortable thing you are, or more comfortable way you are presenting. And if you focus too much on the little stuff, I think that can take away from it. So for what's worth on, like, what do you need to get the message out there? And then once you do it a couple of times, you realize that, hey, people really respond to that. People like that. And it'll grow, like Darren says. There, Darren, I use your name. I'm engaging with you. All right. Anyone else? Please.
How do you know when you manage to make it simple and focused? Because I'm someone who likes to talk about big concepts and things. And so I think that sometimes I have a hard time getting to the clarity and the specificity, or maybe I am, but I don't know if I am. Like, how do I know if my message is clear?
I mean, you can kind of ask people you trust after you've done it, is one way of doing it, but it's kind of awkward. I think for those kind of big conceptual stuff, it is difficult to get out of the ether into the actual real life. So simple and focused doesn't necessarily need to mean few words good, more words bad. It just, I think, means like, do the audience respond to it? So if you've got a big concept, then I would be maybe talking about, like, well, what does that actually mean for you in terms of this? Like, why does this matter to you? And just kind of boil it down that way. So you're no longer just talking about some sort of theoretical event or phenomena. It's kind of like, no, this is important. You really should think more about this, what this means for you.
Yeah, so maybe what it looks like in real life.
Yeah. And if you want to do the engagement thing, ask people, like, does anyone know about this thing? And maybe they do, maybe they don't. And if they don't, then you're like, well, you should, and here's why. Do you know? You can play into more, but just kind of make it real for them, I think, is my best advice there. Hey, I wasn't sure if you were going to ask a question or not. Do you want to ask a question?
Sure. Okay. Let's see.
Treat yourself.
Okay, let's see. Okay, why did you do this to us?
Right. That is an excellent question. Slightly combative, I have to say. Do you know, I wasn't expected to be personally attacked in this. I hadn't presented for a while. Part of the reason was, yes, I'm lonely. That's definitely part of the reason. Part of the reason was also, I think it's education. I think failure is the way you learn best. Not everyone wants to fail by themselves. So I set myself up to fail on behalf of other people by proxy. So that was the original idea. And then it just kind of grew arms and legs and got increasingly worse as I kept working on the slides. And then I, at the end, thought, there needs to be something educational here. So ego, basically, egotism.
And also for preparing and perhaps a warning for what is to come in our own journeys, maybe.
If that's what you take away from this, that would be an excellent tagline. Don't end up like this guy. This could be the end of your journey. Excellent message. Anyone else for any more? If not, all that's left for me to do is...
We can pass more questions if you want.
What is the appetite for questions here? Chris, I think you've had the pleasure.
I've been thinking about this whole day.
Me too.
What on earth are you wearing?
Well, that is an excellent question. So I am wearing the Scottish national attire called the kilt. Now, a lot of people know that, I mentioned in my presentation, but to give you a bit more detail that you're not interested in, this is a modern jacket in the kilt. A lot of kilts you will see is the Bonnie Prince Charlie, which is kind of more sort of bells and whistles on the epaulette area, and I think is kind of shorter. I prefer a modern one. Can anyone identify this tartan? Camel? It's a great guess, but it's not right. It's called Ancient Patriot. It's not a real clan tartan. I rented this first time for a wedding, and then I thought it's finally time to buy a kilt. because I assumed more people would get married and I'd have more chances to wear it. That hasn't happened. One of the reasons I'm wearing this today is because to get my money's worth, because these things ain't cheap, people, okay? Does that answer your question, Chris?
Yeah, but now I have a follow-up question. How many of the fabrics are there, or the patterns?
Oh,
You know that?
like hundreds, if not thousands.
Hundreds.
Like when I went to go and buy one, like they just have books and books and books, and you look through them, and you have to use your imagination to be like, what would that look like covering up the top of my legs and stuff like that. So it's, and in the end, I didn't like any of them, or lack of my own imagination really. So I just went with one that I'd rented before, which is just one of the made-up modern turns. But I think it looks quite nice. So
Yeah.
at least I got that going for me.
Yeah. Nice one.
All right. Let's wrap it up there. So all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for attending. I hope you found it enjoyable, if not enjoyable, useful, or potentially both. And thanks again to Go to 10 for hosting me and letting me do the event, because actually I've really enjoyed it as well. So thank you all.
Thank you.